You can now get 2 free audiobook downloads and a 30-day free trial at audible.bogosity.tv. Your choice from the world's largest selection of over 180,000 digital audiobooks and spoken word content for your iOS or Android device, Kindle, or MP3 player. Go to audible.bogosity.tv now. Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the week of October 29th, 2017, the podcast that's up all night with Freddie King. This is your host, Shane Killian, and returning this week is John Petersen. Welcome back, Johnny.
Happy Halloween from everyone at the Bogosity podcast.
Let's recombobulate the news of the bogus. So you remember when I said about the Equifax breach that if you're wondering if your personal data was stolen, well, it was.
I don't use Equifax, my dude.
It doesn't matter if you use it or not. I think we talked about that anyway, but it's like all of the banks and everyone else reports everything to Equifax. They've got your data whether you do business with them or not.
Okay.
Well, IRS Commissioner John Koskinen has told reporters the same thing in a briefing, and guess what? He's saying that was pretty much the case even before the Equifax breach. It started off sounding a little weird because when he was asked what difference the Equifax breach made, he replied, quote, "We actually think that it won't make any significantly or noticeable difference. But it's not because you have nothing to worry about, but because, quote, our estimate is a significant % of those taxpayers already had their information in the hands of criminals." So here are the numbers. There are about 250 million Americans over age of 18. About 145 million were affected by the Equifax breach, but the IRS estimates that over 100 million Americans had already had their data stolen before the breach, and that includes things like social security numbers and dates of birth, things that can be used to appropriate your identity.
Jeez, man. That is rough for anyone who uses Equifax.
Well, like I said, it doesn't matter if you use it or not. Your data's there.
Yeah.
And in a best-case scenario, there's 100% crossover, which means that those 145 million Americans that lost control of their identities included those other 100 million. But in a worst-case scenario, with a 0% overlap, that means that only 5 million American adults have not had their data stolen out of 250 million.
Those people are what we call the lucky few.
So Koskinen said that Americans should, quote, assume their data is already in the hands of criminals and act accordingly. And that was pretty much what security expert Brian Krebs of Krebs on Security said. But privacy professor CEO Rebecca Harold thinks he was being simplistic. Quote, he apparently doesn't realize that Equifax and the other 2 major U.S. credit reporting agencies possess an amount of data far beyond the other types that have been breached elsewhere. Such things as job histories and associated salaries, home addresses, medical information, schools attended, and so much more.
I see.
Yeah, that's a good point, but you don't need anywhere near that much to do the worst to someone, which is to steal their identity. But it really is the best advice. Assume your personal data is in the hands of criminals.
That is some sage advice from the good professor and the IRS director. Here's hoping they do something about this going forward.
Yeah, it's not really all that clear what they can do, sadly, and Harold really put her finger on the nub of the problem, like we were saying a couple of times before, that you don't really have a choice of whether or not to do business with Equifax. I mean, if you have your choice of a bank or a credit card company, you can choose the one that lets you make a strong password and has good 2-factor authentication, in other words, not texting, and a good policy of dealing with unauthorized withdrawals, but none of us have a choice about dealing with Equifax or TransUnion or any of these other credit reporting agencies. And what she said was, quote, all those people whose personal life data was breached at Equifax did not directly do business with Equifax, as is most often the case with those other breaches he references. There was no way the impacted individuals could have done anything to ensure Equifax had appropriate security controls in place for their associated data. They had no choice. I mean, it's an issue because, as this article asks, what really can you do about it? Well, you can put a credit freeze on. That would help, although that costs money. Keep an eye on your existing accounts, your credit card, your bank accounts. But that's not really the stuff you have to worry about. You have to worry about identity thieves opening up new accounts in your name, and you don't know to check those because you don't know that they exist.
Yeah.
And the problem is we're just using social security numbers for everything, which is not in any way secure. I think the only way out of this is going to be ditching social security numbers and coming up with something cryptographically secure. Say, if you're tired of the promos in this podcast, well, the patrons got it early and with no ads or promos. Just go to patreon.bogosity.tv and donate at any level. Do you have children or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary-aged children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins. So we've talked a lot about the evils of civil asset forfeiture, and of course we talk a lot about cybersecurity. This is a story where both of them come together with the problem of the NYPD's forfeiture database, which cost them $25 million. So we know how they and other police departments have been fighting transparency. They just do not want people to know how much of this is going on and what they can do to get their stuff back. And remember, civil asset forfeiture is when they just take your property or your money without so much as charging you with a crime and without you ever getting your day in court. The Bronx Defenders is a group that's been trying for years to get access to this information. Now, the NYPD is still refusing to turn over the records, but they're saying it's not because they don't want to, but because they can't. They spent $25 million on a forfeiture tracking system that, according to them, can't actually track forfeitures.
The NYPD, protecting and serving themselves.
Pretty much, yeah. Bronx Defenders was able to get enough to find huge discrepancies between what the NYPD claims they've seized and what they've actually seized. Quote, at the hearing, the NYPD claimed that it only legally forfeited $11,653 in currency last year. In the accounting summaries, which the Bronx Defender submitted as part of its testimony, the NYPD reports that of December 2013, its property clerk had almost $69 million in seized cash on hand. The documents also show that each month, the 5 property clerks' offices across the city took in tens of thousands of dollars in cash, ultimately generating over $6 million in revenue for the department. So basically what they say they got in a year, they've taken in more than that every month.
I know, I'm just trying to process, how could the NYPD take so much, and yet they get a lot of respect from the media?
I don't know. But when pressed for clarification in court, the NYPD, the fastest, smartest, most high-tech law enforcement agency in the world, can't figure out how to get the information from its own forfeiture database.
New York's finest, ladies and gentlemen.
Not only that, but apparently it's not even backed up. A city attorney admitted on the stand that a single power surge could result in the loss of their entire forfeiture database. Manhattan Supreme Court Judge Arlene Bluth replied, quote, "That's insane."
I agree with Arlene on that one.
But why should the NYPD do anything to fix it? I mean, they don't want this data getting out. They're raking in millions in cash, and who knows how much else in cars and other property taken, without so much as an arrest or a court hearing, And property owners have to go to court and prove that they didn't do anything and deserve their stuff back, which turns burden of proof on its head. But how can they even try to do that when the NYPD can't even find the records of the forfeiture to show it ever even happened?
Shane, that's because they're like mafia with guns and badges.
It's one more reason civil asset forfeiture needs to be eliminated countrywide as a violation of our 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 14th Amendment rights.
And also why all these Kangs don't trust the police.
Yeah, and probably why we should stop giving police departments like the NYPD so much respect and benefit of the doubt.
Amen to that, brother.
If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. And speaking of not giving police the benefit of the doubt, we've been talking about this new trend of police wearing body cameras. While they have been shown to have done some good in certain isolated cases, overall, sadly, they just don't seem to be the tools of accountability they were always hailed as.
Yeah, big fail there, people.
When they implement these, you do see some initial short-term benefits, reductions in police brutality, etc., but as police become accustomed to the cameras, they slowly go back to their old ways. According to a Washington, D.C. Metro study, quote, "We learned that BWCs do not have detectable average effects on documented uses of force or civilian complaints. It is possible the null finding needs no explanation. The devices, in fact, have no effect on the measured behaviors, and the video footage they produce has no effect on judicial outcomes. Perhaps neither the officer nor the citizen involved in an interaction are actually aware of the camera, either due to attention being diverted elsewhere or desensitization over time to the presence of the cameras. Alternately, the officer and citizen may notice the cameras, but other factors in the heat of the moment may override any deterrent effect the cameras may have had."
So, basically, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, and one reason why it's not much of a deterrent is it turns out to be difficult for a citizen to even get to view the footage of the interaction with the police.
Which is quite sad, to be honest, considering they shoot cats, doggos, and pretty much anything else, including one of their own in some cases. Remember the leg bit from Deputy Derp?
Yeah, I remember that.
Good times, good times.
But they're also not attacking the root problem, because even when you do catch a policeman doing something atrociously wrong, red-handed and undeniable, it's still rare for the policeman to be held in any way accountable other than being given a paid vacation while they're cleared by an internal investigation. And as long as that's the case, what do they need to fear from cameras?
Nothing, my friend. Nothing.
But the biggest problem, as we've seen for decades, is the thin blue line. Report after report finds actual figures of the excessive use of force to be many times greater than expected, as well as bogus accusations of assault on a police officer, reports of the suspect having a gun when there was none, and police even encouraging K-9 units to bite suspects who are already subdued. When someone tries to do something about this, the police band together to protect their criminal brothers just like a mob.
Seriously, don't be so brainwashed by these statist idiots who think the police are there to protect and serve. They're there to protect themselves and serve their higher overlords. Sheesh.
And that's why whenever I hear someone say they're a good cop, I want to ask them how many of the bad cops they've arrested, because if that number is 0, they're a big part of the problem. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do, right? Arrest the bad guys? Yeah, except when the bad guy has a uniform. We live in a world where light bulbs connect to the internet, and recent attacks on them prove that your online security is under threat like never before. Not only your websites, but the internet-enabled devices you buy. And the biggest problem is weak passwords. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords on the web and on your internet-enabled devices, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers, all your computers, and even your mobile devices, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, software licenses, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications, manage passwords for your entire family, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now. And now it's time to kick the legs out from underneath this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And this week it goes to Roy Moore, the Republican candidate running for the Alabama seat vacated by Attorney General Jeff Sessions, for not one, but 2 piles of Bogosity.
Bring it on, Roy Moore, you homophobic little piece of human garbage.
The first is when he showed just how little he cares about free speech. He said that NFL players who kneel during the national anthem are breaking the law. Not that they're violating NFL rules or anything. He's saying it's against the law. Don't believe me? Listen to his exact words. Quote, "It's against the law, you know that? It was an act of Congress that every man stand and put their hand over their heart. That's the law." Yo, Moore, citation needed. I doubt very much he even has a clue about the law, but even if he were knowledgeable enough to give a citation, it would probably be 36 U.S.C. 301, which says that during the national anthem, people, quote, should face the flag and stand at attention with their right hand over the heart, and men not in uniform, if applicable, should remove their headdress with their right hand and hold it at the left shoulder, the hand being over the heart. Now, semantics is very important in the law. It says should. Should basically means this is what we would like you to do. It's not a requirement. If it were, it would have said shall or must. And even if it did say shall or must, it would be completely invalidated by the First Amendment. By the way, in case you needed another reason to hate Rand Paul, he's actually endorsed Moore, saying, quote, "We need more people in Washington, D.C. that will stand on principle and defend the Constitution." Yes, we do, Paul, but that's not Roy Moore, as we can see from this next story, where he says that the Supreme Court ruling upholding gay marriage was worse than the ruling upholding slavery.
What the...
Quote, "In 1857, the United States Supreme Court did rule that black people were property. Of course that contradicted the Constitution, and it took a civil war to overturn it. But this ruling in Eᴛღᴇᴜᴍ is even worse in a sense, because it forces not only people to recognize marriage other than the institution ordained of God and recognized by nearly every state in the Union, it says that you now must do away with the definition of marriage and make it between 2 persons of the same gender, or leading on, as one of the dissenting judges said, to polygamy, to multi-partner marriages." By the way, I don't really have a problem with that either, but unlike Roy Moore, I'm in favor of the right of people to live their lives however they want, not as egotistical, self-righteous bullies like Moore want them to.
And more, buddy, gays have every right to be married as anybody else in this lovely nation. But if you would kindly do away with the autistic screeching about gays are going to give way to pedophiles and polygamy and all that, that would be a really good thing.
He also said, quote, "We've got to go back and recognize that what they did in Eᴛღᴇᴜᴍ was not only to take and create a right that does not exist under the Constitution, but then to mandate that that right compels Christians to give up their religious freedom and liberty." Okay, first of all, he doesn't understand how the Constitution works. If he'd gotten as far as the 9th Amendment, he would know that rights do not exist under the Constitution. They exist by our nature, and although the Constitution expressly guarantees some of them, we still have others just as deserving of protection.
I don't think he's gotten past the prelude of the Constitution.
Second, if he bothered to read the 10th Amendment, he would know that the government only has the powers that are specifically given. And even then, they can't do it if it's prohibited by another part of the Constitution, like the Bill of Rights. Nothing in the Constitution gives the government any power whatsoever over marriage, and even if it did, the First Amendment guarantees of freedom of religion and the 14th Amendment guarantees of equal protection prevent them from imposing one's religious beliefs on everyone.
And guess what? Nobody cares about your ethereal sky puka, Roy. So take your 2,000-year-old Bible, donate it to some religious library that's in desperate need of it, and actually move to a state that's full of gays.
I don't know, if he wants to move to a place where the religious edicts on marriage and stuff like that works the way he wants, there are places like that, like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it'll be nice knowing you, Roy boy.
Also, this whole compels Christians to give up their religious freedom and liberty is horse crap. Nothing in any law anywhere forces any church to marry any two people, gay, straight, or otherwise, or to recognize any sort of marriage. They can believe what they want. They can recognize whatever they want. They can marry or refuse to marry whomever they want. They just can't force that onto others. By the way, Moore is a former Alabama Supreme Court justice who had to be removed from office twice for refusing to follow the rule of law. The first time in 2003 for refusing to remove a monument of the Ten Commandments that he commissioned, and the second time in 2016 for ordering probate judges in Alabama to disobey the ruling legalizing gay marriage. He also fought against the removal of segregationist language from the Alabama Constitution, so here's someone you actually can point to and call a racist.
Yeah, we're looking at you social justice lot, and if you're not gonna call him biggest Bogon emitter, I think it's high friggin' time we do.
So we will. All of that makes Roy Moore this week's biggest Bogon emitter. If you're going to shop online, use our special links to shop at Amazon. Clear your cookies and go to amazon.bogosity.tv, and you won't pay a penny more for your purchase. If you haven't used the mobile app in the last 12 months, or even at all, go to get5.bogosity.tv on your phone or tablet and get $5 off your order of $10 or more. Go to prime.bogosity.tv for a free 30-day trial of Amazon Prime and enjoy thousands of movies and TV episodes, borrow Kindle books, and get unlimited 2-day shipping for free. And speaking of Kindle, go to kindle.bogosity.tv for a 30-day free trial to Kindle Unlimited. Read over 1 million books and listen to thousands of audiobooks on any device. You can go to music.bogosity.tv and get a free 30-day trial of Amazon Music Unlimited with access to Amazon's entire library of 10 million songs, ad-free and with unlimited skips, and even download to listen offline. All great ways to help this podcast simply by shopping at Amazon.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
This week's
who?
This week's Idiot Extraordinaire.
And this week it once again goes to Rachel Maddow, and not only is it her usual conspiracy garbage, this time it's conspiracy garbage so bad even her fellow liberals are calling her out on it.
Wow.
Maddow went on a 25-minute rant on her show that tried to pin the tragic attack in Niger that killed 4 American soldiers to President Trump's travel ban. Her argument, if we can stretch the definition of argument long enough to call it one, is that since Chad is now included in the travel ban, then I don't actually know what step 2 is, but step 3 is the Niger attack.
Now, before we move on here, my condolences to the families of the 4 soldiers that got killed in Niger.
Absolutely.
Rachel, when your arguments are being debunked by a libertarian and a spurg, you need to rethink your entire career. Because what does the Niger ambush have to do with our God Emperor's travel ban? And those people were cowards using guerrilla tactics. Whatever happened to the days where people fought mano a mano, like Ben?
It was so insane that Huffington Post, of all places, called her out on it, saying that her conspiracy theory, quote, was so flimsy that it could be debunked by a quick glance at a map, let alone a phone call with an expert.
Yeah, you are one pathetic journo, Maddow. And this is coming from an ex-journo myself, mind you.
Maddow claimed that Chad pulling out of Niger, quote, had an immediate effect in emboldening ISIS attacks. Not so, according to the Council on Foreign Relations, as well as accounts from local residents. The Niger attack itself was from the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, but the only connection they have with ISIS is the first two letters of their initials. The Chad troops had been there to ward off attacks from a Nigerian militant group who are trying to form the Islamic State of West Africa and are completely independent from either of the others. Maddow could have saved herself the embarrassment, not to mention completely misinforming her viewers, by just running this by an expert like Laura C., who said in reaction to Maddow's comments, quote, "No, that's crazy. Everybody that I know is appalled by this. I would like to think that Maddow's researchers are more responsible."
Researchers? Does she hire them?
We don't have researchers here and we do a better job.
Yeah, that's just pathetic, Maddow.
Chad pulling out its troops doesn't even have anything to do with the travel ban. Quote, Chadians didn't want to keep their forces there forever and were at least looking to scale down. If we do see the travel ban lifted, I'm not sure you'd see the Chadians go back in. Also, the increase in violence started long before Chad was added to the travel ban. According to Andrew Levovic of the European Council on Foreign Relations, quote, there has been an increase of violence in this area and nearby areas for more than a year, and the overall security situation has been getting worse. Yeah, and she has the highest rated news program, both overall and in the 25 to 54 age demographic. And most of them seem to think she's this rational intellectual, unlike Alex Jones, but no, as we've pointed out before, she's fundamentally no different. She comes up with the conclusion she wants, which of course goes against people she's opposed to politically, and uses flimsy, unresearched talking points to establish it. She's as much fake news as anyone else.
And that makes Rachel Maddow this week's Extraordinaire.
Well, that wraps up this How Do People Expect You to Track Them Down If They Maintain No Online Presence edition of the Bogosity podcast. Come join the discussion at forum.bogosity.tv and feel free to send a question, statement, news article, or rant in text or audio to podcast@bogosity.tv. This podcast depends on you to keep going, so please donate using the links on the website or the QR codes in the thumbnail, or become a patron at patreon.bogosity.tv and get the podcast and YouTube videos early and without ads or promos. Thank you for listening, and thanks to John Petersen for joining me.
And happy Halloween.
Until next time, here's a quote from Ed Priuski. The problem of police brutality is primarily a problem of state-sponsored violence. Police officers and other law enforcement officials and armed government agents operate on behalf of and with the authority of the state behind them, placing them in a separate class from other citizens in the criminal justice system. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Bogosity. Christmas time is coming, and the most classic of Christmas stories is A Christmas Carol. But how much do you know about the original Charles Dickens novella? Have you dismissed it as a children's book with one-dimensional characters amounting to nothing but platitudes and cliches? Maybe your appreciation of the book was even muted by those dry, boring, annotated books they made you read in school. My book, the sarcastically annotated A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens,
uses both facts and humor to present the book in a way you probably haven't seen it before. Giving praise when deserved and beratement when warranted, this book is put in the perspective of its time and shows a dimensional, multi-layered Ebenezer Scrooge from start to finish. Skepticism, history, and even economics are employed to show the book in relation to today in an easily accessible format. Appreciate the Christmas of your youth all over again. Get the sarcastically annotated A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, available at Amazon and on PDF as well.